Welcome to a world filled with challenges, temptations, and a barrage of distractions. In the midst of chaos, where misinformation abounds, we're here to be your beacon of inspiration. Welcome to Optimum Ideation Podcast, where we dive deep into the teachings of great leaders to illuminate the path to a better society. In a quest for the best of human ideation, we're on a relentless pursuit to unearth the most profound insights that can elevate humanity. At Optimum Ideation, our mission is clear: to share invaluable knowledge with the future leaders of the world, empowering them to navigate the complexities of an unjust world. Sometimes all we need is a spark of inspiration or a fresh perspective to shift our focus. Join us as we delve into the profound reasons behind human behavior, offering tricks to save time, hacks to optimize your operating system, and unveiling captivating discoveries from the greatest thought leaders of our time. Optimum Ideation isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the heart of human potential. Get ready for a roller coaster ride of inspiration, insight, and innovation. Human's best ideation awaits you at Optimum Ideation, where brilliance knows no bounds. The best of human ideation. Welcome, everybody, to Optimum Ideation Podcast. And today we have an awesome guest, author, and a life helpful coach. Someone here to help you on your path to success. Welcome, Nicole. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we met on a little networking call and decided to do some discovery calls and see where we could work together. And I always enjoy helping other people that are building platforms to help others. So, so glad to have you join the show today.
So glad to be here. I'm so excited about this conversation. I can't wait.
Well, I like to go right into the questions and let you kind of talk about yourself and, your career, your personal life, and how you got to here where you're building now. So tell us, what's your personal story, your career path, and how did you get to here?
Well, that's a very long story, but I'm going to try and make it short. I spent most of my childhood moving around a lot. I was the child of a man who was working for one of those international companies that got moved around every 2 years. So I grew up pretty much adapting, every 2 years adapting to new environments and so forth. And I think that kind of set the stage for me for the rest of my life to always go through change and adapt, go through change and adapt. And I think it kind of formed who I became because my identity was almost formed around that, constantly adapting to the environment, to the point where I think I lost a little bit who I was really, and it put me on a path of exploration and just sort of curiosity about the identity thing, who we are, how we become who we are. And going down rabbit holes in that. That's my passion now. That's my, exploring the human experience. And
Yeah, I guess we kind of have a similar path. I moved around a whole lot and, had to adjust myself to fit into all kinds of different cultures and different things, moving from North America to Texas and just different cultures in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, and moving in between schools and things. And it makes you kind of adjust and And yeah, I understand what you're saying. I kind of moved around a lot afterwards and had to fit in and traveled a lot with work that I was doing. And, it's just, learning all these different skills and things to fit in. And
yeah, and it kind of becomes a pattern, isn't it? You sort of adopt that. And I noticed that with that pattern of changing every 2 years, even in my adult life, I was seeking that change all the time.
Yeah.
I had to change the decoration in my house or my apartment. I had to change, anything I could change, I would change, because I would get, sort of bored with what was going on around me every 2 years. And it took me a while to figure that out, to realize that had become an ingrained pattern. So it's interesting how these things have an effect on us.
Yeah. So, what kind of career path did you take? I mean,
well, it's a really interesting one. I was really interested in art when I was young, tried to get into an art school after, the high school, and didn't get in. And then, sort of, I went into computers because at the time in the 90s, computers was the next best thing. And it was just, so I went to university, studied that, went into project management, did some sewing. I did 50,000 different things.
Yeah.
But I was always really interested in that was bound to happen. So what I was really interested in the human relation thing, how, what motivated us and so forth. So I did my thesis on motivation, so there was always that thing. There was art and motivation always sort of strewn in there right from the start. But then I went on and I did all sorts of things. And finally, when I was 45, I came back to this whole thing about human connection and went into coaching based on, a frustration at work, really what it was. And somehow things started coming back together. So I did many different things, mainly project management, mainly computers, but came back to sort of the essence of what always kind of, would light my fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Now, along your journey, what layers did you have to reveal to become who you are now?
I think the biggest layer that I had to reveal was the whole people-pleasing thing. And it's an interesting one because I would find strength in helping people, in pleasing people, in always being available, always being there. Yeah. And for many years, I thought this was, I was strong, until I realized that the whole people-pleasing thing was a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Was really something where I was trying to hide behind, and it was a way of not being vulnerable. It was a way of not showing my weaknesses, and I really had to work on that hard. Like, it hit me hard when I realized that it was all a facade, and that I was sort of duping myself really more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And to remove that layer and really recognize that there's no honor in sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's something I think in our society we still tend to honor, people who sacrifice themselves. But I think when it becomes your way of working, when it becomes your go-to mechanism to always be in sacrifice, it's not useful. It's not useful, and it brings an energy into the situation which is off. Other people then have to work with that energy which is not aligned, and it's just really, really not useful. So for me to realize that sacrifice was actually not honorific, I would not get a medal for it, and that it wouldn't serve me, and that to be in service of other people did not mean that you had to sacrifice yourself.
Yeah.
That you actually, not helping yourself by doing that, that was a really big thing for me to come to realize and to come to terms with as well. And I still, I still have to work on it, because it's a pattern that's so ingrained that even if you take layers off, there's still other layers beneath, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like, we're all here to help each other, to serve each other, and yeah, you got to peel that away. You have to, it's okay to sacrifice your ego sometimes, but you do it, if you do it so much that it's just, you have nothing left of your own, then I could see it being a real, troublesome thing to get through. So with that being said, what is the next layer to remove?
I think the next thing to remove, or to is that level of staying quiet. I think when you're constantly in sacrifice, in my case anyway, it was about making space for other people all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to sort of stop putting everybody else before yourself. It's another to step into the space that is there for you, right? To speak up, to find your voice, to
make your space.
Use it, to make space, and it's so funny, because even the other day, my dad was over for dinner, and there are two things that he would tell me when I was young, when I started, especially in the business world. And there were things that his father told him, and he's still, he's 88 years old, almost 89, and he still feverishly is, clinging onto it. And he says the first piece of advice is never say anything unless you've got something better to bring to the table. Yeah. And the second one is you never learn if you're speaking. You only learn when you're listening. And both of those things, even though they have a lot of value, and I really, adopted them for a long time.
Yeah.
I realized that both of those things, when you push them a little too far, make you stay quiet.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly thinking, I can only speak if I have a better idea, if I have the solution to the problem, then, I would question myself, is that worth saying? Well, no, not really, because it's not quite, I don't know if that'll fix everything. I don't know if it's going to wow people. Am I speaking too much? I should stay quiet, because otherwise I won't learn. And these things can then, sort of nip you in the rear end, because they're also excuses to not take that space.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting how these things affect you, and how, something that is well meant, and that is, these values, these family values that are handed down to you, can actually stop you from just, stepping into that space that's there for you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think it serves us to appreciate those values that our teachers are teaching us, but maybe to make it your own is to alter the statement and revise it for the next generation. So, maybe take some of those sayings and add a little something to it and make it your own, and then maybe that will help keep that bit of old and bring in something new with your own twist on it. But no, there's plenty of sayings, and I agree with you. Those are some good pointers there. But I find the people that will enforce those things and teach you those things, they'll be the ones to talk the most and take up some of the most space. So it's like, hey, give me a breath in here to say something.
Yeah. I think what helps me put things into perspective now is to realize that, there's always that paradox to every situation, to every saying, to every thing that exists, to every, energy has two sides. And it's not just about not going over the top and, avoiding extremes. It's just knowing that there is not one sort of truth without the opposite existing simultaneously.
Yeah.
Right. So to know that, yes, that's a valuable lesson, but depending on the circumstances or depending on to what extreme you take them, they'll flip you exactly in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So it's to always be aware or try to, to sort of measure and bring into account that there's a counterpart. There's the shadow side of that. And everything doesn't exist in isolation. It always exists with the flip, the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Very well said. So people get to where they want to go in life because they know where they want to go. Where do you ultimately want to go?
Okay, so this is a question that I've gotten asked a lot, and people tend to ask, even when we're little, right? People ask, so what do you want to be when you grow up? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And it's a question I've always found extremely difficult to answer.
Yeah.
And even in creating a business and so forth, people are constantly saying, yeah, but you got to know where you want to go. And I think I've come to realize that I'm such a fan of journeys. I am such a fan of adventures without knowing where they end up. There's a beautiful word called Kariwampo. And it's a very old English word, and it's about, I'm gonna not say it correctly, but it's about going with a determined manner to an undefined destination.
Yeah.
Knowing that I know how I want to walk. I know what my values are, and I know what's important to me. And apart from that, I just want to experience the game of life. I want to experience the ultimate life experience in a way.
Yeah.
But where that leads me, where I end up, that's kind of the beauty of the unknown. I think the more, for me, I try to control the outcome, the more I close the doors of opportunities that might arise, and take me on a little path that's sort of, the scenic route. I love scenic routes. I hate, going to the final destination, missing out everything that I could have seen on the way. So it's probably not a great business strategy, but I find it definitely a more suitable travel agenda for me.
Yeah. I understand. I was always open I never wanted to miss out on the fun side of things, even though I've always been like a hard-nosed, hard worker, and like, here's my job, here's my goal, here's what I'm doing. I never wanted to like have regret. And so, it's like, I feel like once I start feeling regret, I start kind of going into, kind of your way of thinking is like, okay, well, I don't want to miss out on these things. We have this one life, this one existence. And it's like, trying to live without regret, but also become like a very well-known businessman. It kind of puts you in this, on this, kind of where you're trying to figure out the truth. What should I really do with this life? This body that I have, this mind that I have, the soul that I have, what should I be doing with my time here? So, yeah, no, I completely understand you. But I found this question so profound. It's like, because in business, you want to have your plan of execution. You want to plan ahead for, let's say, 1, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And that helps you define your path that you're going on. And so, I find it interesting, that you have a different point of view.
Well, it took me a long time to accept it. I think I also needed to accept it because I was beating myself up so much about not knowing where I wanted to go and what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And the result was just, shame, guilt,
anxiety, stress,
frustration, not feeling good enough, and realizing that, well, different people function differently.
Yeah.
And some people, know what they want to do. Some people know it since they're tiny. Some people, have a very, very clear picture of where they want to go.
Yeah.
And I've tried, I have paid a lot of money hiring people to try and help me define these things, to try and help, create that path. But I lose motivation when I do that, because then I start doubting it. I start questioning it.
Yeah.
And when that comes in, I think, I get bored very easily. I don't know if that's from the pattern from when I was a child, but if I have to stick to something that feels like it's not aligned, but I should just go through it because I've set that goal and now I should stick to it, it just feels off. And so by accepting that maybe I don't work that way, maybe it's not about creating a business, it's not about success, it's not about leaving a legacy, and also realizing that the inner journey that we go on as individuals to step into alignment, to be closer to who we are, the fact that we're working on that inner journey allows us to show up better for the world, right? So the more we have done our inner work, the more the outer world will reflect back sort of the work we've done. And so, for several years, when I started coaching about 12 years ago, it was great because, first of all, I found a purpose that I thought was amazing, and I really felt like, oh, all of a sudden now I found it. I found my purpose. I found my passion. This is it. Sitting there in that room with people and holding space for them and seeing them, their brains working and finding these answers and just, being there for them to be able to do that was so amazing. But after several years, I realized that by focusing on them, I wasn't doing my own work. They were going from a very stuck situation and they would take off. And they would, move forward, and I would be amazed at how the work had impacted them, how they had managed to get themselves out of it, and how I helped a little bit in the process.
Yeah.
But I was still in the same place. Yeah. I was still dealing with the same issues. And I realized that as a coach, it's so easy to find value and worth in helping others. And that feels good, right? It feels great because, they thank you profusely. You see that you've had an impact. But there came a point where, for me, I was starting to really feel like an imposter. The imposter syndrome was coming in really, and it just wouldn't go away. It just keep nagging and nagging and nagging. Because I was still in a relationship that I was unhappy in. My business wasn't working the way I thought it should be after the amount of time that I'd spent on it, and all these things, that were sort of sitting around me that I was festering, but that I would not address. And so recognizing that I had to do work on myself.
Yeah.
No matter how great the impact was on other people, I was gonna hit a wall, and that imposter syndrome was just gonna, keep nagging at me that I had to do the work on myself. And now I've come to this sort of conclusion that work is never going to stop.
Yeah.
The self-work is there is no, you never get to a point where you say, oh, now I got it. I figured it out and I can, go and do my business. To me, that inner work is precious. It's valuable, not just to me, but to the people around me. Yeah. And I've kind of accepted that that's where my work is. And somehow I just have to believe that the trickle effect, is what I'm supposed to be doing, is going to have the impact that I'm supposed to have, whatever that is. But not because I'm focusing on it as a goal, just because I'm doing my inner work.
Yes. Yeah. I never, I don't feel like I really battled with imposter, whatever this is that people talk about all the time, and in business, it's like, if you're generating revenue, then you are in business, and it's like if you have clients or you have money coming in, that's because you're generating business. So it's like, I just never really had that. Whereas my business partners, we were, a few million in on our business, and they still felt this thing. And I'm like, guys, like, it's like, at what point do you not feel that way? And it's like, I'm not having that issue. Like, I'm selling, I'm closing deals and doing the job. And here we are at several $1 million now. And why are you still feeling that way? It's like, it's because they didn't do the personal work that I've done throughout my life, and everybody lives different lives. And so I never really, understood that, because I've always kind of been put in crazy situations that I've had to dig my way out of. But, with that being said, let's discuss some of your most challenging trials and tribulations.
Ooh, my most challenging trials and tribulations. Well, there have been a number. I think, one of the big ones was that when I got into the business world, when I went into, or let's say the workforce.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the third of 3 children, 3 girls. Okay. So, this whole male-female thing for me was inexistent. Even at university, there was no difference between men and women, and girls and boys and all that kind of stuff. And when I started working, I started working in a very male-dominant environment, on very masculine products, and I did for all my sort of corporate life, which is really interesting. Why I would be working in the construction field and in the soccer and all these things that are very male areas. And it was interesting because I was surprised at first by some of the challenges that would face me, the fact of not being taken very seriously, a young woman in a very masculine field, sort of like, and okay, we're in the 90s, but still, even in the 90s, you'd think that there wasn't any problem with that anymore. At least I did. I was naive enough to think so. But it was interesting because I didn't want to fall into that sort of pattern of saying, oh, because I'm a woman, I'm treated, they're treating me differently. I thought, no, just, channel, whatever it is that makes you a woman and use that a bit and just, step up. And if you got to work harder at it, just work harder at it. Don't complain, don't go into the whiny voice and all that kind of stuff. But what happened, I think, as a result of that is that I really suppressed my feminine energy.
Yeah.
I really went into that sort of male energy thing because the world was and still is in a very male, energetically speaking, environment, which is go from A to B, get there as fast as you can, action, action, action.
Yeah.
And not the sort of, oh, let's go with the flow and feel things and how things move out. And the whole feminine energy thing for me I was actually quite critical of it. I was very, I would think it's a bit silly and it's, and I never had, even when I was a child, I didn't have many female friends and things like that. So I think one of the big challenges was for me to actually reconnect to my feminine energy. And it was by being confronted with all this male energy that I was kind of pushed in that direction. But it took me many years to figure that out. And I never liked sort of that conversation about blaming men or blaming, masculine or whatever. And I resisted it. And I still don't do that because I think we all have challenges, male and female, and we but there's a lack of balance. I think that's what's causing a lot of friction, is this imbalance in energies.
Yeah.
And we could do a whole podcast on that.
Sure. definitely.
But I think one of the things that I'm very aware of now is how there's a need for balance between these energies.
Yeah.
So that was a big obstacle that I faced a number of times, feeling challenged with these different energies, not embracing my own, and then sort of getting out of balance with between the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit as well, and it's I've picked up on it too, and I feel like, and I just had a conversation about this yesterday. That we're in such like a masculine world, and man, I was even succumbed to it as well, and I've been in many of fights and things throughout my life, and battles, and it's like I feel like maybe this past century or what have you, I feel like has just been a very masculine time. But I feel like before, maybe more than 1,000 years ago, I feel like that women were the natural leaders of this world, and I feel like the world was maybe at peace at one time, being under the rule of women, more so than we are now. And we've just seen war for centuries, and it's really kind of sad. But I do follow other countries around the world, and I do see there is some female leadership in some of these countries, and it's a different mindset, and it's really nice to see that, and it's good to see that.
Yeah, and I think it's a very complex subject.
Yeah.
It's complex on one hand and very simple on the other. I think it gets complicated when somehow we make it about men and women, and there's and all that kind of stuff. And I and we can blame, I think the witch hunt had a big thing to do with all of this. And you can go back in time and find those pockets of shifts, right? And and that can explain a lot of things, I think.
Yeah.
But the question is more, just before you asked me the question about the goal, again, it's such a, when you think about the energy of it, right?
Yeah.
It's about to go from A to B, and where is that B that we're going? And it's just something we've adopted. So it's so ingrained. These ways of thinking are so ingrained, and there's not much room for that just sort of like being okay, just being and exploring.
Yeah.
And I think men and women, we could really benefit from more just accepting that we don't have to have a plan all the time, or we can just explore the beauty of the moment. And and I think these are all very feminine energies, and both men and women have them, right? It's just that we've not been tapping into them over the last X centuries as much as in pagan times or in older times. And it's just a shame, because I think we all have to relearn how to connect to both those energies. And I think if there is friction, it's because we're all out of balance, with energies. Women are out of balance, men are out of balance, and so we're trying to work our way through this. And
I've found a lot of peace in learning about like Hemisync, where you're syncing your hemispheres of your brain, and the different techniques of how to do so, as well as when I met my wife, I was probably super masculine, and then meeting my wife and learning more of a feminine way to handle things. It really, and then having my daughter, the birth of my daughter, it just it was like, wow, I've been looking at this world in such a just conquer kind of mindset, and having my daughter, it's like, how can I be so hard on myself? How can I be so hard on anyone else? when I have this precious, beautiful baby girl right here, and it's like, it's like, I just had this epiphany, if you will, like I really need to be lighter on others and do things that help lift people more than even I already was from a masculine standpoint. All right, let's go. I'm going to help you get to this goal. It's just, it's more of a loving, how can we approach this with a more thoughtful approach, if you will,
Yeah, and it's all, it's all generated from love. And this is sort of the paradox or the irony behind it all, I think, is that all this learning and all these patterns about being, goal driven and action driven, and they all come from, well, on one hand, they come from fear, because ancestors said, you have to be like this, you have to be like that, either to succeed, to survive, to be accepted, to, make money so that you can survive, so that you can belong, behave this way and that way.
Yeah.
But that fear is only, it's the fire behind the love, because, you want your children to be accepted. You want your children to survive. You want your children to succeed. And so there's this thing that, they give this baggage to us that they received, and, you can go back X number of generations.
Yeah.
And what can feel like baggage and harmful and patterns that we need to dissolve and, heal from and remove, to realize that they actually do come from, yes, fear on one hand, but fear for our safety, fear for our acceptance, and so ultimately really love. Yet they can be very damaging.
Yes.
And, and again, it's this sort of paradox of how something that was meant to help us ends up hurting us.
Yeah.
But that's what I find also so interesting about this whole game of life, really.
Exactly. Let's go to a quick little commercial break, and we'll come back, and I've got some more intriguing questions for you.
Okay.
One moment. She emerges, the tapestry of her journey woven into the fabric she wears. TGC Fashion presents the winter collection, where the urban landscape becomes a runway. In every stride, a story is told. From the city's rhythm to the untamed symphony of the mountains, she rises, a beacon of strength against the canvas of the winter's embrace. In the cold winds, she finds warmth. In the shadows, she becomes the light. It's not just about clothing, it's about an attitude, a narrative, a woman redefining the season. Alter your closet's DNA, each piece a genetic code of style, designed to transform not just what you wear, but who you are. It's not just fashion, it's an identity. TGC Fashion, where every outfit is a new chapter, and every woman is the author of her own story. Together, we alter the genetic sequence of fashion. All right, so let's get into your journey. And what is something more trying than you had expected when you began your coaching career?
What was more trying? Well, the whole business side of things, to be honest, because, I was so driven by just wanting to help people and being amazed at that energetic shift that happens in that space and so forth. Like I would tell people, I just want to grab people off the street and ask them if they have, some time and they want to be coached for free. Like that's how passionate I was about it. So the business side, the marketing side, the all of a sudden having to define a niche, all of that came really very, it was like I was trying to put on a coat that was way too tight or way too fitted, because things didn't make sense to me. For me, coaching was all about exploring and creating space and not having a goal. And just, you can have a goal in terms of, what you want to walk away with at the end of a session in terms of realization or understanding, but you're making space to explore whatever comes up. But to then, when I started working, trying to build a business, it was, find your niche and tell them what they're going to get. And, and having to define this very clear path seemed so not only counterproductive, but it just didn't stick with what I fell in love with. Because to me, it was all about, again, that go, go, go. So we're not going to open all the doors to explore. We have to go through step A, B, C, D to get there. And, when I said, yeah, but I don't resonate with that, and the answer would be, yeah, but that's what people want. That's what they want to hear. That's what they want to know. It just felt so out of, I'm going to use the word again, of alignment, because, but it felt wrong, like literally wrong to me. And it felt fake to me. It felt like I was building something that all of a sudden didn't make sense anymore. And I would push myself, I would resist, and then I'd surrender. I'd push myself to step into that. And then just before I'd get to the finish line, I'd give up. Because the closer I get to the finish line, the worse it felt, the more I hated where I was ending up, the more I disliked who I was becoming. And yeah, it just didn't work for me, until I realized that I was trying to walk somebody else's path, for whom all this might work very well. And okay, maybe for, 90% of the population, that's what they want. But I had to really realize, okay, I have to walk my own path. I have to find my own way. It just doesn't work for me. And so realizing that I had to find a different way of functioning. And that's when play came into the scenario, really.
Yeah. I really liked, we had a previous discussion, and you say you like to tie in like art and different things into your creative, into your business side of things. And I found that awesome, and even into your books and things like that. And so you may speak on that a little bit, about what you've done or what you're doing.
Well, I think I came to I went through different paths to get where, coaching, certification, so forth, spiritual retreat, even, plant medicine and all these kind of different approaches. And so, I shook my own tree quite a bit. And what became more and more obvious to me, even team coaching, and especially in team coaching, I think what I realized was that when people play, they open up, they connect better. Things happen that don't happen when you're not playing. And so I would really push that whole play thing. I'd create games for these teams to interact, see what would happen. And all these things together, these different paths I was taking, I realized that the universe really reacts to play. Like if you are in that playful energy, there's a response. And so I just kept feeding that, I just kept feeding the idea of exploring play, because for me, play, it's not about having fun all the time and laughing and giggling and all that kind of stuff. For me, play, the definition of play is exploration without expectation. That's how I sum it up. That's in my mind and my body, that's how it feels, which means we can go on an adventure, but we're not expecting any specific outcome. And I think when we're on that kind of a mindset trip, we open ourselves up to a whole lot of possibilities. It's when we bring the expectations in that we start limiting ourselves, because we're afraid of failure and all that. And so, and this is what we lose when we grow up. We lose this childlike desire to play, because all of a sudden there's too much on the line. And so now the projects that I work on, they are full on integrating the playful mindset. And it doesn't mean just playing games. It means being in that experimentation without expectation energy, finding joy in what we're doing, even if, well, we might, fall on our knees or scrape ourselves or, have a bit of a tumble. It's all part of the game, isn't it? They say that if you don't fall when you ski, it means you're not advancing. For me, it's the same. If you go on a playground and you don't come back with a bit of a scratch, well, you haven't played hard enough. And so, but then, falling is okay. Falling is fine because we're just playing. So the projects I work on, so I created this book called Stumbling Upon Myself, which is a coloring book for adults, but it's much more than that. It's there are stories in there, my own stories. There's room for reflection. There are musings. It's sort of an exploration of the self. And the interesting thing was the way it came to be. I was trying to create a book for people as a self-help book, and I was creating these images, but messages to me kept popping up in these images, and I would say, well, okay, I can't put that image in because it's too much about me. It's not generic enough. So, start over. And in the end, I realized, okay, I'm just too present in these images. Maybe this book is supposed to be about me. And that, again, we're talking about taking that space, allowing ourselves to take that space, to take room in society. And I just said, okay, well, this has to be done. And so I gave myself permission. I gave myself permission to publish these images, to write my stories, to integrate them, and to take that space. And it was a really, really useful process for myself. And you know how we were saying before, Joey, sorry, but something outside happening. The process of just allowing myself to take that space and go on my own journey and then sharing it with people was really healing for me. And I think having done that now allows me to show up better for other people. So now I'm creating this game called Project H, which is a real offline game of quests and stories, and where we're connecting with different energies. And sure, it's a game I'm creating in a way for myself. If I want to be honest, I'm creating the game that I need to play. But everybody that I talk to about it is like, oh, I need this. And I think when we cater to ourselves, we cater to others. It's when we're trying to cater to others, trying to guess what they need, that, we're probably not, we can't be spot on. But if we cater to ourselves, we give a chance to step into that aligned space where others might, who resonate with it, can get something from it. I can't hear you right now.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued by it. It's such a great idea, and the reason why I like to interview authors is because one day I do want to write a book, and so it's like I just have to form all these different ideas. It's such it's a difficult task, to put something together and put yourself into something and pour yourself into it, and like you said, to own your piece of it, and go ahead and write for yourself because it's going to help others. I really like those little pointers there, and and the strength that it takes for you to do that. It's overcoming things in your own mind to be able to get to that point. And so I just find it very intriguing, and I really like your process where you're just like, you're okay with adding your own art into your business and your books, and I think that's so cool. I think it's a very cool thing, and I think that people could really respect that and appreciate that as authenticity, right?
Well, I realized that drawing, at first I used drawing when I brought it back sort of into my daily life. I used it for my own process to understand things. I'm somebody who's very visual. And so when I'm trying to understand a concept or, a process, it helps me to draw it out, to see it visually. I have a hard time just computing it with words. And so I was making these drawings and these maps just for myself, to help myself. And then I would start sharing them with my clients because I thought, well, okay, this is maybe a bit complicated. So, does this image help? And they go, oh, this makes it so much easier to understand.
Yeah.
And so this is again, I realized my art or my process, my drawing process apparently helps others. But initially it was to help me. It was to help me make sense of things. And I also noticed that when I'm drawing, it just calms me down and things come through. It's almost like a channeling approach to things, right? There are things I'm drawing on a piece of paper if I'm not trying to think too hard and I'm really just letting the pen do its thing. There are messages coming from my subconscious mind. And it's worth giving them some space, right? It's worth, because there's so much in our subconscious mind that serves us, but we often don't listen to it. And you were talking about the hemispheres, right? Balancing the left and the right. And I find that with that drawing and art, well, you're accessing that right side of the brain, which is that creative thinking process, which is that subconscious, feminine energy of creativity. And I find that it just opens us up. And even doing this with people who aren't sort of attracted to art, or who don't think that they're good at art or artists, I've done these exercises with people where they, with a pencil and just letting them draw, and it can be very powerful stuff. So I integrated it really out of need more than just to make things, pretty.
Yeah. No, I understand. Maybe you could tie that into, a best piece of advice for an audience that truly wants to better themselves and others in this lifetime. Maybe you could tie this way of thinking into that.
Well, I think it's a lot about just following, your what's calling you. And it's not about what you're good at or what you think you can obtain or what makes you different. It's more about what you feel like doing. What some people need to sit and meditate. Some people need to move. And I need to draw. And maybe other people need to do something else. But to find your own thing, not try and find that answer outside with topics that are, being sort of presented to us all the time of how to do these things, but to just follow sort of our instinct and make space for that. I find that for me has been very valuable.
Yeah. Wow. So what practices or techniques make your day a success?
Well, drawing.
Yeah.
Drawing certainly does. Movement as well. There's one practice I've been doing, whether I'm in a good mood or a bad mood. I look out the window when I get up, doesn't matter what the weather's like, and I just sort of repeat to myself, oh, another day in paradise. And because, I think we kind of created this world for ourselves, and it's paradise if we want it to be. And so there are these little practices I do to remind myself that I chose to be here. Some part of me, some soul part of me, higher self, whatever you want to call it, energy, decided that I wanted to have this human experience. And even if it's not great every day, it's still a choice. And so I like to embrace it the best I can and remind myself of that, with all the, ups and downs that come with it.
Yeah. Positive reminders. Yeah. Because, if you're spending a lot of time online or looking at news or what have you, it could really bring you down. So make time for some positive reminders.
Yeah. And just, looking out, like I say, looking out the window. I mean, right now I use this backdrop because I'm in the mountains and it's snowing. It's getting dark now, but just watching snowfall, and realizing it'll never fall this way in this place again, It's just being in the present moment, I guess.
Yeah. A few years ago, me and my wife, we actually rented for a year after we sold our home in the city in Houston.
Mm.
And we moved. We figured if we're going to rent, we're going to live exactly where we want to live. So we moved to the Texas Hill Country on a river. And so that was the first time in my life that I really just had full access to fish whenever I wanted, full access to just go adventure and go be in nature without people around for like miles. Like, you know, I would never see anybody down there. And it was like we had, you know, a mile worth of river that I could go play in and never see somebody, essentially. And you know, just out there in nature, the birds, you know, you see all kind of wildlife and deer and everything, and you know, just fishing and catching and cooking fresh fish, and you know, and like you said, you know, that river, it'll never look the same. You go out there, you know, each and every day or a couple times a week, and it's always going to be changing. And it's you know, and just learning that even water has its own energy, it has its own life, and it starts here and it ends up there, and it takes different paths, and you know, just pondering on these things and learning things that people are not focused on. They're focused on what's presented to them, and they don't go seek these things.
Yeah.
And so it's you know, it gives you a different point of view. And so I like that you like to travel and be in different locations and things, because you're experiencing all these different things and bringing that into your work and your writing, and I imagine it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, no, I think you're right that the whole nature bit is, you know, is way too understated.
Yeah.
You know, we have so much to learn and to feel and to receive from nature just by being in it and watching it. I think nature is our best teacher. Nature is what taught us to play. You look at any, you know, animal, that's how they learn. That's how we were created to learn, through play. And it's enough to just watch and ponder that. It's so much to take. Yeah.
So I like to, you know, I think this is a great question because it kind of speaks to who you are. But what three, you know, what few people would you like to interview, live or dead, if you had the chance?
What two people would I like to interview? Alive or dead? Oh, I think it's really hard for me to say three people. I mean, I do like, there's one that would always come up when somebody would ask me that, and that's the Dalai Lama, because, you know, there's just something so I find interesting about people who are in that spiritual realm.
Yeah, mystic, ancient.
Yeah. And I think now it's not so much about people as it is about energies, in a way, you know, because I think those who, but, you know, I could cite Ram Dass, or I could cite, you know, these people who know that we are not disconnected, right? We are not I mean, we're here to have an individual experience in a way, but ultimately we're all from the same source, and ultimately we're all just mirrors of each other and parts of each other. And you know, I like to picture a little child playing with little Playmobil thing, you know, figurines, and the figurines think that they're all individuals, but actually we're all part of the child's you know, process and character and whatever.
Game.
Yeah, it's all the same game. You know, I like to, that's how I see it, is, you know, a child just learning through play, and we're just part of the process. So for me now, I take a lot of I like take a lot away from every interaction that I have, because I look at that interaction from a different eye. And I know that, today we spoke a lot about me and, you're interviewing me, but, turning the table and interviewing you or asking you all these questions and I would find just as interesting as well, because it's about learning those different perspectives. And so for me, each human can be so interesting if they're in that space of conversation, connection, because they are part of a whole and part of me, and and I just find that fascinating. So
yeah, I love what you said there, because my actual, our mission statement at Third Party People is professional perspective solutions for aspiration excellence. And so, it's finding people's dreams and helping them, with our perspective for their excellence, And so I feel like it kind of ties together what you were saying there.
Yeah.
If you ever write a book or another book, what will it be about?
Well, I'm working on one right now, right, which is a game book. It's 7 quests. It's about Project H, which is all about how to be human. From the perspective of us being spiritual beings having a human experience. So I think there's so many things I'd love to write about. Play the energy of, spirituality. I don't know. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I have a long list of topics that I'd love to explore, but I try not to get away, let myself run away with it. But let's say one thing I do, and we didn't speak about it here tonight, and that's fine, which is the unity living process, which is all about the manifestation of things through play, through these energetic transmissions. And I think just the observation of messages coming through the universe, even if it's just a book about the things that I've seen happen to me or around me that are just so mind-blowing that you just have to sit and laugh at how perfect everything, sort of presents itself in a weird way, because I know the world is far from being perfect, but the energetic mechanisms of things, the mirrors, the little playful messages coming through, the humor of the universe. Once you take away that things feel good or bad or happy, sad or painful or whatever, when you take that element away and you just observe how it plays with things, I find it fascinating.
Me too. Absolutely. Me too. Yeah, it's just, it's humor. It's funny how all this stuff pans out, and we only see this world from the now, from right now, and what's happened. The whole story is way down the road, and we won't see how it all puts together until we get to that down the road,
Yeah.
But as you progress, you can look back and say, oh, well, that's why that happened that way, and that's why these evil things happen, and that's why, it all just kind of puzzles together and creates something that we don't really ever see the full puzzle on,
Yeah.
So
how everything has a purpose, even if it's hard to accept that, especially when dramatic things happen, but there is still a purpose behind it, even if it's just to put us back on track, right? It's about sometimes hitting those edges of, well, that's out of bounds, that's not serving us, so get us back on track. Well, you got to get burned sometimes to realize, okay, let's not go over there. so it's about bringing things back to where they're supposed to be, and that's an interesting thing. And I think that's one of the nice things about actually growing older, you know, which in itself is not necessarily always very pleasant.
Yeah.
But to have that ability to look back, to have enough of the experience to realize, oh, look at that. All those years where I felt lost, all those years where I tried all these different things and had the feeling I just keep starting and stopping, going in 50,000 different directions without purpose. All those things make sense now.
Yeah.
Right. I see now how everything falls into place.
Yeah.
How every job I did, how every, you know, thing that didn't seem to make any sense at the time makes sense now.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the benefits of you know, of having been here for a little longer than some people.
Yeah.
But you know, I still can't explain everything, but it's nice to, I think that's, you know, you become a little more philosophic about things when you age because you see those things.
Yeah.
And when you open your eyes, you see that there are so many more than you realize when your eyes are a little bit closed. So yeah, I just like him.
Yes. So as we kind of wrap up, how can the audience get in touch with you, network, join your community? Where can they reach you?
Well, I think you've got my website on the screen, so they can connect to me through the website. You know, there's my email is there. And
perfect.
So I'm always happy to engage, have a conversation, have conversations online, offline. They can order my book through that website as well. Find a little bit of information about Project H, even though it's still in the making. So I'll be posting more about that as time comes. And yeah, feel free to you know, connect with me or even book a call. There's a, you know, link on my website to book a call if you want to chat directly.
Perfect.
Or find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I have the advantage of having a name that's not very common, so there's only one of me. There's not, you know, 20,000 of me. So
yeah. I found that there's a whole lot of me's I didn't know about. Let's see. And then, you know, finally, do you have an event? Do you want to talk about your book, product, invention, or service that the audience can help you to promote?
Well, the book that I have right now, which is Stumbling Upon Myself, I actually don't have a copy with me. I would have liked to flick it, you know, like this, but it's I think a fun little book. It's going to have a bit of a discount promotion as of the 7th of December. It's going to be 20% off up until Christmas. So anybody who wants to promote that, there's going to be a discount. Anybody who wants to, you know, explore it, feel free to, you know, order one or ask me about it. Other than that, well, my product's not quite ready yet, but I am posting every day on TikTok, trying to make people aware of it.
Very good.
Yeah, just strike up a conversation with me and we can see what, you know, what we can explore. I love co-creation as well. I love collaborating. So
very good.
Always open to conversations.
Very good. Well, it's been such a wonderful time getting to know you even more, and I hope you enjoyed our time together. I'll be closing the show out, but I just want to, you know, thank the audience for watching, and you know, I hope that you reach out to Nicole. Don't be shy; she will respond to you and give you a moment. And I wish you all the best, Nicole. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so enjoyable.
All right, let's close it out with a little outro. See you next time.